The last idea of the day always arrives right as you're trying to stop having ideas. What happens inside a creative brain when it finally lies down is not rest the way most people imagine rest. Tonight, we follow the mechanism that turns the dreaming mind into something closer to a studio, where your brain mixes images you have never seen from experiences you almost forgot. That is the question we have been circling: why do creative brains dream so differently? The science suggests it is not imagination that drives vivid dreaming. It is architecture. The creative brain is wired for loose connections, and REM does not quiet that. It amplifies it. Welcome back to Psychology for Sleep. Whatever you made today, finished or unfinished, you can set it down here. If you want a place that understands the particular restlessness of a mind that never fully stops, subscribe. Come back on the nights the ideas feel like too much. One breath together before we go further. In and out. Letting today's making settle where it needs to. Back to the journey we have been on. Tonight follows that architecture, the one your brain has been running quietly all along. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're where the making finally stops asking anything of you. The question that brought you here is already beginning to answer itself. Let it. The creative brain's relationship to sleep is tonight's subject. It begins here. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. But what makes a creative brain distinctive is not the number of cells. It is the pattern of connections between them. Research comparing highly creative individuals with matched controls shows that creative people demonstrate stronger functional connectivity between the default mode network, the executive control network, and the salience network simultaneously. Most brains activate these networks in opposition. Creative brains run them together. During waking hours, this can feel like being pulled in several directions at once. Too many ideas. No clear hierarchy among them. During REM sleep, that same connectivity becomes something else entirely. The architecture of vivid, narrative bending, emotionally complex dreams. Tonight follows that architecture to where it lives and what it does while you rest. REM sleep was identified in 1953 by Nathaniel Kleitman and Eugene Aserinsky, who noticed the sleeping brain periodically entered a state of intense electrical activity that looked almost identical to waking. The eyes moved. The muscles went silent. The mind appeared to be doing something. Early researchers assumed it was random. Later, researchers realized it was anything but. REM is now understood as the stage most associated with vivid, story-like dreaming, where narrative, emotion, and image combine into experiences that feel more real than memory. For creative brains, this stage is particularly active, particularly long, and particularly strange. If you are someone who wakes with a vivid dream still sitting behind your eyes, you already know the studio your brain runs every night. One of the defining features of REM sleep is the near-complete suppression of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter heavily involved in focused, linear, analytical thinking. During waking hours, norepinephrine keeps your brain on task. It sharpens attention, enforces logic, and prunes associative leaps before they fully form. During REM, that pruning stops. Without this editorial function, the brain is free to make connections it would normally reject. Remote ideas link. Distant memories surface next to recent ones. The filter is off. This neurochemical shift is one of the reasons REM dreaming feels so different from waking thought, and one of the reasons creative people, whose brains may already run with looser lateral inhibition, experience their most extraordinary internal imagery precisely when they are most unconscious. The default mode network was once considered the brain's resting state. Researchers noticed it activated when participants were told to do nothing, and assumed it was a kind of background hum. They were wrong. The default mode network is now understood to be actively involved in self-referential thought, autobiographical memory, mental simulation, and imagination. It is most active when you are not focused on external tasks. It is also the network showing the strongest activity during REM dreaming. For creative individuals, the DMN tends to be larger and more robustly connected to other networks, meaning the dreaming brain in a creative person is not simply replaying the day. It is running a full generative simulation, drawing from deeper memory stores, stranger associations, and a wider imaginative range. Dream researchers studying content across populations have found consistent differences between highly creative individuals and their less creative counterparts. Creatives report more frequent lucid dreams, dreams in which they become aware they are dreaming. They report more bizarre transformations, people becoming objects, places shifting without logic, timelines collapsing. They report more emotionally intense dreams, particularly those involving aesthetic experience, beauty, dread, transcendence. And they report more problem-related dreams, versions of creative challenges appearing in dream form, sometimes resolved, sometimes only approached from an angle they had not previously considered. The brain that makes things by day does not stop making things by night. It only changes rooms. Researchers studying REM sleep have documented that it significantly enhances what they call remote associative thinking, the ability to draw non-obvious connections between ideas that share no surface similarity. In studies where participants were given compound word problems before sleep, those who entered REM were substantially more likely to find the solution after waking than those who did not reach REM or were kept awake. The mechanism appears to be the same loose network activation that characterizes creative cognition during waking hours: amplified, unfiltered, and running without the oversight of the analytical mind. Your dreaming brain is not resting. It is working on the hardest version of your problems. The images produced in REM dreams have a particular quality that distinguishes them from ordinary waking imagination or even hypnagogic imagery at the edge of sleep. REM images are often described as hyperreal, more saturated, more spatially detailed, more physically convincing than anything produced by deliberate visualization. Researchers believe this is related to activation of the primary visual cortex during REM, which fires with an intensity rarely seen in any other state. The brain is not imagining images during REM. In a neurological sense, it is seeing them. For creative individuals who work in visual mediums, painters, filmmakers, designers, architects, this nightly activation represents hours of involuntary, intensely rendered visual experience. The waking eye cannot replicate. Salvador Dalí famously used a technique he called slumber, with a key to harvest the hypnagogic state between waking and sleep. He would sit in a chair holding a heavy key, so that as he began to drift off, the key would fall and the clatter would wake him, preserving half-dream images before full sleep erased them. What Dalí was doing, without the neuroscientific language, was attempting to access the loosened associative network that exists in the transitional state before norepinephrine suppression is complete. Researchers studying hypnagogia now understand it as a genuine neurological state. Not simply the absence of consciousness, but a different kind of presence, with its own characteristic imagery and creative potential. Dreams during REM are not random noise. They have structure. They carry narrative arcs, emotional through lines, and recurring characters. Sleep researchers analyzing dream reports have found that they follow what might be called dream grammar, patterns of transformation, encounter, and resolution consistent across individuals and cultures. For creative people, this structure appears more elaborate, more internally consistent, and more emotionally complex. The dreaming mind, particularly the creative dreaming mind, is not simply generating imagery. It is constructing experience, and the experience it constructs tends to mirror, in altered form, the emotional and conceptual questions the waking mind has been carrying. The science of creative cognition and the science of dreaming keep arriving at the same junction. Both states work by activating networks without fully constraining them. Both allow ideas to surface before they are evaluated. Both tolerate contradiction, ambiguity, and incompleteness in ways the focused analytical mind does not. Neuroimaging studies show that the brain states associated with creative insight during waking, the moment before an idea fully forms, what researchers call the pre-solution period, bear a measurable structural resemblance to early REM activation. The question this raises is not whether creativity and dreaming are connected. It is whether they are, in some neurological sense, the same operating mode accessed through two different doors. Theta waves, oscillations in the 4 to 8 Hz range, appear prominently in two distinct contexts: the early stages of sleep and moments of relaxed, generative, open-ended thinking. Artists, musicians, and writers in flow states show elevated theta activity in frontal and temporal regions. REM sleep shows elevated theta activity in the hippocampus and surrounding areas. Researchers studying this overlap have proposed that theta oscillations serve as a kind of neural bridge between the creative and dreaming states, a brainwave pattern that loosens categorical thinking, facilitates emotional processing, and allows memories to recombine in unexpected configurations. When a musician wakes with a melody they did not consciously compose, theta may be the mechanism that assembled it. The hippocampus, central to memory consolidation and spatial navigation, is particularly active during REM sleep. Less commonly known is that during REM, the hippocampus appears to replay memories in a scrambled rather than sequential order. Unlike slow wave sleep, where memories are often replayed forward in time, REM replay is non-linear, combining fragments from different time points, different emotional contexts, and different sensory experiences. For creative individuals, this non-linear hippocampal editing may be one reason dreams contain such unexpected juxtapositions: the face of a childhood friend on the body of a recent colleague, a childhood home inside a foreign city. The hippocampus is editing. It is working without a conventional narrative logic. Research published in Current Biology found that brief naps containing REM sleep led to significantly higher rates of creative insight compared to non-REM naps or remaining awake. The key variable was not the duration of sleep, but the presence of the hypnagogic transition, the state at the edge of REM entry, where theta oscillations spike and norepinephrine drops. Participants who entered this transitional state, even briefly, showed dramatically improved performance on tasks requiring them to find hidden structural patterns in number sequences. They were solving a different problem than the one they had been given. The REM-adjacent state had restructured the information into a form the waking analytical mind could work with. Paul McCartney has described waking in the night with the full melody of yesterday already complete in his mind. Seemingly from a dream, he spent several days asking friends whether they recognized it, convinced he must have heard it somewhere. Keith Richards reportedly kept a cassette recorder by his bed to capture riffs he heard in dreams. Mary Shelley dreamed the core image of Frankenstein before she had a story to put it in. These are not exceptional coincidences. They are documented patterns in a population, creative individuals, whose brains appear to engage in REM-driven recombination with unusual intensity. The dream is not inspiration descending from outside. It is the brain's own archive, reorganized. Sleep deprivation disproportionately damages REM sleep. Because REM is concentrated in the later sleep cycles, particularly in the final 90 minutes before natural waking, cutting sleep short by even an hour can eliminate a full REM cycle. For creative individuals, this loss is particularly costly. Studies comparing creative output in sleep-deprived versus well-rested creative workers show significant decreases in novel idea generation, increased rigidity in problem-solving, and reduced capacity for what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different modes of thinking. The restless creative who sacrifices sleep for more working hours, neurologically speaking, trading the resource that replenishes the very thing they are trying to protect. There is a phenomenon in creative populations sometimes called the pre-sleep creative surge, a period in the 20 to 40 minutes before sleep in which creative individuals report unusually high rates of idea generation, unexpected insight, and spontaneous image formation. Sleep researchers believe this corresponds to the onset of hypnagogia, the gradual suppression of norepinephrine as the brain transitions towards sleep. The editorial mind goes quiet before the rest of the mind does. What you experience in that window, the image that appears before you, have decided to imagine it. The line that surfaces before you have chosen the words is not random. It is the creative network running without constraints. For the last time, before the body insists on rest. The amygdala, involved in emotional processing and threat detection, is disproportionately active during REM sleep compared to other stages. Researchers initially found this puzzling. Why would the sleeping brain overactivate its emotional processing center? One emerging theory is that REM serves a kind of emotional recalibration function, replaying emotionally significant memories in a neurochemical environment stripped of stress hormones, allowing the brain to preserve the informational content of an experience while gradually detaching its acute emotional charge. This may be why creative individuals often report dreaming of difficult emotional material in ways that feel, upon waking, less threatening than the original experience. Sleep is doing restoration work the waking mind cannot do for itself. In studies examining the dream content of writers, visual artists, and musicians, researchers have found that creative individuals are more likely to report metacognitive dreams, dreams in which they observe themselves creating, evaluating, or discussing their own work. A painter dreams of standing before a painting she has not made. A novelist dreams of reading a passage he has not written. A composer dreams of hearing a piece she has not composed. These metacognitive dream states appear to be a form of internal simulated rehearsal, the brain running future creative possibilities through the dreaming system before they are attempted in waking reality. What the dreaming mind builds in rehearsal, the waking hand sometimes finds waiting. Lucid dreaming, the state in which a dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming and can, to varying degrees, direct the experience, occurs predominantly during REM sleep. Self-reported lucid dream frequency correlates with scores on measures of creative thinking, openness to experience, and visual spatial ability. Controlled studies have found that training in lucid dreaming led to measurable increases in creative problem solving on standardized tasks administered after waking. The mechanism appears to be that lucid dreaming strengthens the brain's capacity to simultaneously hold two contradictory states: the experience of an event and the awareness of its illusory nature, which is also a fundamental capacity in creative work, treating an invented world as real while knowing you invented it. Not all creative people sleep easily. The same connectivity that enriches dreaming can make sleep onset difficult. Too many associations firing as the brain attempts to settle. Too many ideas surfacing in the hypnagogic window that feel like they deserve attention. Researchers studying creative populations have documented higher rates of sleep onset difficulties among highly creative individuals. Not because of pathology, but because of the particular challenge of quieting a network that is built to stay active. The irony is neurological. The brain that produces the richest dreaming is often the brain most reluctant to enter it. What this hour describes is not a flaw in that architecture. It is the texture of a particular kind of mind. Dreams involving the experience of aesthetic beauty, encountering a landscape, a piece of music, a building, or an artwork that produces a feeling of profound appreciation, are reported significantly more frequently in creative populations than in the general population. Some researchers propose that this reflects the dreaming brain's capacity to generate aesthetic experiences independently of external stimuli, the mind encountering its own creation as if discovering something made by another. There are documented cases of visual artists waking from dreams and immediately sketching what they saw. Work that felt made by someone with an aesthetic sensibility the waking artist could only aspire to. Sleep makes things the waking hand does not always recognize as its own. The neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo has proposed the threat simulation theory of dreaming. The idea that one function of dreaming is to simulate threatening scenarios so that the waking mind can rehearse responses. In this framing, dreams are practice runs. For creative individuals, the rehearsal appears to extend beyond threat. Their dreams simulate social dynamics, aesthetic choices, narrative possibilities, and technical problems as frequently as they simulate dangers. The dreaming brain of a creative person is not primarily a threat simulation system. It is, in Revonsuo's terms, a broad-purpose simulator, running whatever category of experience the waking mind has most heavily invested in. With the editorial filters down and the emotional volume turned up, cross-cultural dream research has found that while certain dream themes, being chased, falling, arriving unprepared, are near universal, the specific imagery within dreams varies significantly with occupation, training, and creative engagement. Architects dream in geometry. Musicians dream in rhythm and tone. Writers dream in dialogue. The dreaming brain draws from the same symbolic vocabulary the waking brain uses most. What this means practically is that the development of creative skill and the enrichment of creative dreaming appear to be reciprocal the more deeply you engage with a medium during waking hours. The more richly and specifically that medium appears in your dreams. The night is stocked by what the day practiced. Research tracking dream quality, alongside creative output over extended periods, has found a consistent pattern. It is not total hours of sleep that best predicts creative performance the following day. It is the quality and completeness of REM. Participants who reported more vivid, emotionally complex, and sensorially rich dream content also reported higher creative output in the days that followed. The correlation held after controlling for mood, motivation, time spent working, and self-reported creative confidence. The quality of the night before the good day matters more than most standard accounts of creative productivity have been willing to fully acknowledge. What these facts have been building toward is a principle that creative individuals have intuited for centuries without the neurological language to describe it. Sleep is not the interruption of creative work. For the creative brain, sleep is the other half of creative work, the half that runs without you, without oversight, without the pressure of intention. REM is the state in which the brain's own recombinant potential is most fully expressed, loose connections amplified. Editorial filters down. Emotional memory gently reorganized. The default mode network and executive system cooperating in the only configuration they find natural. The creative mind at rest is not resting. It is doing the thing it does best, in the only condition where that particular thing is possible. These facts are describing is not a romantic idea about artistic temperament. It is a structural account of how a specific type of cognitive architecture behaves when the constraints of waking attention are removed. The same connectivity that makes the creative mind restless, associative, and difficult to quiet is precisely the connectivity that makes REM sleep, when it finally arrives, so generative. What you couldn't know from outside the research, the facts did slowly, across this first hour, by naming the mechanism that was always already operating, not how you feel about your creativity, what your brain has actually been doing with it. Notice where in your body that settles. What the next facts follow is the deeper question. Not just how the creative brain dreams, but what happens to creative capacity when the dreaming is interrupted, altered, or, in the rarest cases, fully remembered. Sleep architecture. The sequence and proportion of sleep stages across a night is not fixed. It shifts across a lifetime, across periods of creative productivity, and across states of psychological stress. REM sleep is particularly sensitive to these fluctuations. Alcohol, which is commonly used to quiet a restless pre-sleep mind, suppresses REM dramatically. Antidepressants in the SSRI class also reduce REM duration in many users, as documented in pharmacological sleep research. Stress elevates cortisol, which is antagonistic to REM onset. The interventions most commonly used to produce sleep are often the ones most likely to suppress the stage of sleep that carries the creative return. The phenomenon of sleep-dependent insight, the tendency for previously unsolvable problems to become solvable after a night of sleep, has been studied most extensively in mathematical and logical tasks. Researchers have also extended these studies to explicitly creative domains, open-ended design problems, narrative writing tasks, and musical composition challenges. The finding is consistent sleep, and specifically REM sleep, facilitated qualitative shifts in approach. Participants did not simply try harder after sleeping. They came to the problem differently, from a new angle, with a new structural assumption, with a connection they had not previously considered. The sleeping brain had been working on the problem without informing the conscious mind it was doing so. Dreams are not the only nocturnal creative phenomenon. Sleep talking occurs predominantly in NREM stages, but occasionally in REM. And researchers studying creative individuals have documented cases in which sleep talking produced coherent verbal content, complete sentences, phrases with aesthetic quality. Even in rare documented cases, lines that were meaningless to the speaker but evaluated as having literary value by others. The implication is that creative generation during sleep is not always the kind of thing that requires conscious access to retain. It surfaces in behavior, in vocalization, in the fragments that survive into waking. Sometimes, what the sleeping mind makes does not wait to be asked. Hypnagogic hallucinations, the vivid, often surprising images that appear in the transitional state between waking and sleep, are reported more frequently, more vividly, and with greater narrative structure in creative individuals. Thomas Edison was reportedly fascinated by hypnagogia and used techniques similar to Dali's to harvest it sitting in a chair with steel balls in his fists, so that when sleep deepened, the balls would drop and wake him, retaining the transitional imagery. Whether the specific details of these accounts are apocryphal matters less than what they point toward the transitional state is genuinely generative, and creative individuals appear to have known this intuitively, across cultures and centuries. There is a form of dream that some sleep researchers have described as a creative synthesis dream, one in which the dreamer encounters a finished work, a completed painting, a fully realized musical piece, a novel already written, These dreams are reported most commonly by individuals deeply immersed in a creative project, and the works encountered in the dream are typically not retrievable in full upon waking. What remains are fragments, a color palette, a chord progression, an emotional quality, a single sentence. The brain had assembled something complete. The waking mind received only what the transition allowed through. The finishing capacity is real, even when its output cannot be fully retrieved. Research into the creative lives of highly productive artists and scientists consistently finds that the most generative individuals are not necessarily those who work the most hours. They are those who protect, often obsessively, the conditions under which their creative processing can occur. And for many of them, sleep is foremost among those conditions. Charles Dickens reportedly walked for miles in the middle of the night to exhaust himself back into sleep. Tchaikovsky kept strict sleep schedules despite his famously turbulent inner life. What these individuals understood, without neuroimaging data, was that the quality of the work produced by the waking mind was inseparable from the quality of the sleep that preceded it. The emotional tone of creative dreams shifts across a night in predictable ways. Early REM cycles, the briefer, shallower episodes in the first half of the night, tend to produce dreams with more anxious, conflict-oriented content, unresolved problems, social tensions, missed deadlines. Later REM cycles, the extended, deeper episodes that dominate the final hours of sleep, tend to produce dreams with more integrative, expansive, and emotionally resolved content. For creative individuals, this late sleep REM is where the most generative dreaming occurs. The imagery becomes richer, the narrative becomes stranger, and the emotional texture becomes something that is harder to name but easier to carry into the day. The clearing happens first. The making happens after. Memory consolidation during sleep is not a passive archiving process. It is an active transformation. During sleep, the hippocampus works in dialogue with the prefrontal cortex and other cortical regions to decide what to keep, what to integrate, what to connect to existing knowledge structures, and what to let fade. For creative individuals, this transformation has particular implications. Memories of creative work, images seen, problems worked on, ideas partially formed, are not simply stored, but actively processed in relation to the broader network of what the brain already knows. A sketch made in the afternoon may be neurologically connected, overnight, to a color relationship observed 10 years earlier. Time is not the organizing principle. Association is. There is a rare but well-documented phenomenon in which a creative individual dreams of a specific technical or aesthetic solution to a problem they have been consciously unable to resolve. The chemist, Auguste Kekulé, famously dreamed of a snake biting its tail and woke to propose the ring structure of benzene. The mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan attributed several of his most significant theorems to dreams. The composer Giuseppe Tartini reportedly dreamed a violin sonata in full. These examples are often dismissed as anecdote. But when researchers systematically study populations of creative individuals, the rate of reported creative dream solutions is significantly higher than chance. And the solutions, when they can be evaluated, are frequently valid. The brain's approach to time during REM dreaming is fundamentally non-linear. Dream time does not correspond to clock time. A dream that feels like hours may occupy minutes of REM. A series of events spanning decades in the dream can be processed in a single sleep cycle. This temporal distortion is related to the same hippocampal replay scrambling described earlier. The brain is not constructing the dream in real time, but assembling it from pre-existing pieces. And the assembly runs faster and stranger than any experience the waking mind could construct. The dreaming brain prototypes, iterates, and recombines at a speed the waking mind cannot match. One of the more counterintuitive findings in creative sleep research concerns the relationship between emotional difficulty and REM richness. Studies have found that periods of psychological difficulty, grief, creative block, significant life transition, are often followed not by reduced dreaming, but by dramatically intensified dreaming. The brain appears to respond to emotional challenge by deepening REM investment. This suggests a functional relationship. The more unresolved material the emotional system is carrying, the more aggressively the sleeping brain attempts to process it. For creative individuals who are also emotionally sensitive, the hardest periods of their lives are also, neurologically, periods of intense nocturnal creative activity. The work continues, even when the person cannot. The relationship between dreaming and waking creative capacity is not one-directional. Sleep enriches waking creativity, but the evidence also suggests that waking creative engagement enriches dreaming. Artists who spend more hours in focused creative work report more vivid, complex, and symbolically rich dreams. Musicians who practice for extended periods experience increased auditory complexity in their dreams. Writers who work deeply with language report more verbally sophisticated dream content. The directionality appears to be reciprocal the more you develop your creative capacity during waking hours. The more material the sleeping brain has to work with. What the day builds, the night uses, and what the night makes, the day inherits. Creative individuals across cultures and historical periods have described a particular quality of waking after a vivid dream, a state characterized by heightened sensory sensitivity, unusual emotional openness, and a brief window in which the connections made during dreaming remain accessible before they fade. Many report that the first 20 minutes after waking from intense REM dreaming are among the most creatively productive of their day. Not because they are fresh, but because they are still partially in the dreaming state. Some have developed rituals to protect this window, lying still before moving, keeping a notebook beside the bed, avoiding bright light. The goal is to stay near that threshold a little longer. Researchers studying creative populations have found that what predicts creative output on a given day is less the total quantity of sleep the night before and more the specific presence or absence of full, late-cycle REM. A person who slept 8 hours but had the last cycle disrupted may wake with less creative bandwidth than a person who slept 6 hours with intact late REM. This challenges the assumption that more sleep is always better for creative work. For a creative person calibrating their sleep, the question is not only how much, but when, and whether the final hour was allowed to complete itself. Research has documented a specific neurological state that occurs in the moments between falling asleep and the onset of full REM. a transitional window in which the brain produces theta bursts. Norepinephrine begins its decline, and the default mode network begins its REM characteristic activation, while the individual remains accessible to gentle external prompting. This is the state that Dali, Edison, and others were attempting to prolong. In laboratory conditions, researchers have used gentle auditory and tactile cues to extend this transitional state, and participants showed significantly increased performance on creative insight tasks. The edge of sleep is not a passive place. It is an active threshold, most productive when it is not rushed. The picture that has emerged across these facts is precise. The creative brain's relationship to REM is not incidental. It is structural, bidirectional, and functionally significant. The same connectivity that defines creative cognition during waking, the loose network, the amplified default mode, the tolerance for unresolved associations, is the connectivity that makes REM dreaming so rich in those who carry it. Tonight's central question asks why creative brains dream differently. The answer is because the thing that makes them creative is the same thing that makes them dream the way they dream. The architecture is the same system, running in two different states. There is a category of dream that researchers have described as integrative, one whose function appears to be the synthesis of material from different time periods and emotional domains into a coherent new whole. These are not problem-solving dreams in the narrow technical sense. They are meaning-making dreams, the sleeping brain taking disparate material, an old relationship, a recent creative project, a half-remembered childhood image, and finding a way to make them cohere. Creative individuals report these dreams more frequently, and the integration they describe tends to operate at the level of theme and symbol rather than narrative logic. The night does not only remix, sometimes it resolves. Research comparing musicians trained before and after the age of 7 with untrained controls showed significant differences in dream content across all three groups. Early trained musicians reported the highest rates of auditory dreams, dreams with music as a primary element, and showed the most complex auditory imagery, full orchestrations, novel compositions, and, in several reported cases, music that the dreamer could not have consciously composed upon waking. The implication for all creatives is consistent. The degree to which a medium is internalized during development affects the degree to which the sleeping brain deploys it. The deeper the training, the richer the nocturnal use of what that training produced. One of the less discussed aspects of REM dreaming in creative individuals is the experience of aesthetic failure in dreams. Dreaming of making something inadequate, something that does not reach the standard the dreamer aspires to. These failure dreams are common in populations with high creative standards and are associated, interestingly, with higher waking creative output rather than lower. Researchers suggest that aesthetic failure dreams may represent the sleeping brain running quality assessments, testing the standard against the performance, rehearsing the discriminative capacity that the waking creative mind needs. The faculty that criticizes in the night is the same one that refines in the day. The role of color in creative dreams is a specific area of ongoing research. Studies conducted in eras when black and white television dominated found that a significant proportion of people reported dreaming in black and white. Contemporary studies, with populations who have grown up with color media, find that the vast majority report dreaming in full color, and that the saturation and vividness of colors in dreams correlates with the intensity of waking visual experience and creative training. Visual artists report dreams with color qualities they describe as exceeding anything achievable, with waking materials internally luminous, carrying emotional information as primary properties. The palette available in sleep does not exist in the waking world. When individuals face extreme creative pressure, approaching a deadline, confronting a significant block, completing a major project, researchers have observed a specific change in dream content. Instead of the narrative-rich dreaming of ordinary creative life, they report repetitive, emotionally flat dreams that seem to replay the problematic creative material without resolution. Sleep researchers interpret these as evidence that the sleeping brain is attempting to process material it is encountering too frequently and too recently to integrate fully. The same loop, running on repeat, is a sign the brain needs distance from the problem, not more hours with it. Rest is the space that allows a new angle to become possible. In studies of creative aging, examining how creative capacity and sleep architecture change in older creative individuals, researchers have found a consistent pattern. REM sleep declines with age, as it does in the general population. But the correlation between REM quality and creative output remains strong. Older creative individuals who maintain good sleep hygiene and protect late sleep cycles show significantly better creative performance than those whose REM has been disrupted by age-related sleep fragmentation. The REM creativity relationship is not a developmental feature of young creative brains. It is an ongoing functional relationship that persists across the lifespan, and that is worth protecting at every stage of it. The emotional resolution of grief and creative loss shows a specific signature in REM dreaming. Studies following individuals who experienced significant personal or creative losses found that the rate and vividness of REM dreaming increased in the weeks following the loss, and that dream content moved progressively from direct representations of the lost person or project toward more symbolic, integrated representations. The brain is not simply replaying the loss. It is reclassifying it, moving it from ongoing active concern toward integrated memory. What arrives on the other side of that process is not the same memory. It is something that has been held, examined, and set down differently. The quality of insight that occurs upon waking differs from insight during ordinary waking cognition in a specific way. Waking state insight tends to be linear. You follow a chain of reasoning, and the conclusion arrives at the end. Post-REM insight tends to be holistic. The answer arrives whole, without a visible chain of reasoning. And the work that follows is not discovery but translation, putting into words or marks or sounds what has already been, in some sense, known. Researchers describe this as a shift in the neural basis of knowing, from sequential activation of frontal analytical networks to the simultaneous Gestalt activation of distributed networks. Sleep does not show its work. It just hands you something finished. The question this video has been circling has been answered in its scientific form. Creative brains dream differently because the architecture that enables creative cognition, the amplified default mode network, the loose lateral connectivity, the reduced norepinephrine threshold, is also the architecture that generates the richest, most narratively complex, most emotionally textured dreaming. The creative brain and the dreaming brain are not two things. There is only one system, doing the same thing in two different states of consciousness. The creative brain at rest is not a resting brain. It is a brain doing something specific, necessary, and irreplaceable, something that cannot be done any other way, in any other state, at any other time. What the science keeps returning to is the same finding. Restated in 50 different forms, the night is not separate from the work. For the creative brain, the two halves of a day, the making and the dreaming, are expressions of the same underlying capacity, each feeding the other in ways the waking mind cannot fully observe. The restlessness that made sleep difficult at the beginning of this hour, the same restlessness this hour has been describing, is quieter now than it was at the start. Notice where in your body that shift has landed. The last facts do not explain. They confirm. What they confirm belongs to whoever has been listening this closely. The cultivation of creative dreaming, the conscious effort to improve the quality, frequency, and retention of creative dreams, is a practice with both ancient roots and emerging scientific support. Ancient Egyptians practiced what they called dream incubation, sleeping in sacred spaces with specific intentions. Indigenous cultures across every continent have developed practices for entering and working with dream states. Contemporary researchers have found that intentional pre-sleep suggestion, holding a creative question in mind as you approach sleep, not forcing an answer but simply inviting the question, consistently increases the proportion of relevant dream content reported upon waking. The sleeping mind takes requests. A personality trait that consistently predicts both creative achievement and dream richness is openness to experience. One of the 5 major personality factors in trait psychology. Individuals high in openness show greater curiosity about internal states, greater tolerance for ambiguity, and greater aesthetic sensitivity. In the sleep literature, they also show significantly richer and more varied dream content, more sensory detail, more emotional complexity, more unusual imagery. The correlation is not explained by intelligence or education. It appears to reflect something more fundamental. The trait that makes the world seem interesting is the same one that makes the dream world seem alive. Research examining brain activity in professional visual artists during REM sleep has found that the visual cortex, specifically regions associated with complex object recognition and aesthetic judgment, shows unusually high activation compared to non-artist controls. The sleep finding adds something important. The aesthetic processing of visual artists does not simply pause during sleep. It continues in altered form, without external input, drawing on the brain's own generative capacity. The visual artist who dreams of seeing is not using imagination the way the word is usually meant. They are engaging a real perceptual system with internally generated content. Research examining pre-sleep activities has found that engaging with creative material in the hour before sleep, reviewing a project, sketching, reading in the domain of your work, significantly increases the proportion of domain-relevant content in subsequent dreams. The brain's memory consolidation system is weighted toward recently activated material, which means the last hour before sleep is not simply wind-down time. For the creative mind, it is set-up time. What is placed on the workbench at closing shapes what the session produces. There is a documented relationship between creative block and REM disruption that researchers are still working to fully characterize. Creative individuals reporting extended periods of creative block also report at significantly elevated rates. REM disruption, fragmented dreaming, reduced dream recall, dreams with flat or repetitive content. Whether the block causes the REM disruption or the REM disruption causes the block is not yet established. The relationship is likely bidirectional. When the creative work is not coming, one productive question to ask is not what is wrong with the waking work process, but what is happening or not happening in the hours of sleep that precede it. There is a dream phenomenon that occurs with particular frequency in creative individuals, the dream within a dream. One in which the dreamer believes they have woken up, only to realize they are still dreaming. Sleep researchers believe this nested dreaming reflects the brain's ability to construct and inhabit multiple simultaneous narrative frames, a capacity that maps closely onto the creative skill of maintaining multiple perspectival levels at once. The character inside the story and the author who constructed the story, the viewer inside the painting and the painter who made the viewing possible. The capacity for one may be an expression of the architecture underlying both. Research examining the creative dreams of manga artists and animators found that these individuals report dreams with explicit compositional awareness, noticing framing, panel structure, pacing, and light source in ways that untrained dreamers do not. More unusually, several reported dreams in which they experienced their own work as if created by another artist viewing their own characters from a different visual sensibility, a different line quality, a different emotional register. What the sleeping mind modeled was not just their own aesthetic, but the aesthetics they might be capable of reaching. The same richness that produces the most extraordinary creative dreams has another face. Night terrors and creative nightmares are distinct phenomena, but share one feature: emotional intensity that exceeds the content's apparent cause. Night terrors, occurring in NREM sleep, are purely physiological arousal responses without corresponding dream content. Creative nightmares, occurring in REM, are intensely emotional experiences with rich, coherent dream narratives. Research suggests that the emotional intensity of creative nightmares in high-openness individuals reflects the same amplified amygdala connectivity that generates their most vivid, positive dreaming. The system that makes the beautiful dream possible is the same one that makes the frightening one. Before human hands made anything, something was already dreaming. Studies of rats by MIT researchers Matthew Wilson and Kenway Louie in 2001 found that rat hippocampal neurons fired during REM sleep in patterns that mirrored the patterns produced while the rats navigated mazes during waking hours. The rats were, apparently, dreaming of the maze. The replay was not simply a recording, but an edited version. Sequences were reordered. Pauses were extended. Unexpected combinations occurred, even in non-human animals. The sleeping brain is not simply archiving, it is transforming. The capacity for nocturnal recombination is older, and deeper than human creativity. Among the documented accounts of creative individuals describing their dreams, a recurring theme appears that formal studies have only recently begun to examine the experience of the dream as something received, something that arrived from a part of the self the waking mind does not have access to. This is not a supernatural claim. It is a phenomenological description of a neurological fact. The generative processing of REM occurs in regions that the conscious self, during waking, cannot observe or direct. What is made there is made by a self the waking mind does not fully know. The dream arrives from somewhere. It is just that the somewhere is inside. Sleep researchers have identified a form of creative anxiety in individuals with high creative standards, the fear of waking from a dream that cannot be recovered. Creative individuals who have experienced the loss of a vivid dream, who have felt its contents dissolve in the first moments of waking, report a particular form of grief that less creative individuals do not report to the same degree. Some develop elaborate systems to prevent it: voice recorders, bedside notebooks, specific waking rituals. The stakes of forgetting feel real because, neurologically, they are real. The dream that cannot be recovered was assembled in the night, and the night keeps no copies. REM sleep is particularly vulnerable to what researchers describe as residual arousal, the heightened cortical activation produced by digital engagement, social interaction, and performance-oriented activities in the hours before sleep. The brain preparing for REM requires a gradual lowering of arousal that is disrupted by sustained high stimulation input. For creative individuals whose waking hours are often marked by exactly this kind of intensity, the transition to productive REM sleep may require more deliberate management. The hallway needs to be quiet before what is behind the door can begin. There is an asymmetry in how creative individuals remember their dreams. High openness individuals tend to remember more dreams overall, more fragments, more emotional residue, more traces of specific imagery upon waking. But the most significant creative dreams, the ones that feel most important, are often the least recoverable. Researchers believe this asymmetry may reflect the depth of REM processing, the deeper the integration, the further the content travels from accessible memory. The most transformative dreams may leave the least direct evidence. They show up instead in the work, in an unexpected shift in approach, a new emotional register, a problem that somehow no longer feels like a problem. The language of sleep and the language of creative process share a set of metaphors that are not accidental. Wallace, who mapped the stages of creative insight nearly a century ago, called the fallow period between engagement and breakthrough incubation, a time of apparently doing nothing, while the brain does everything it cannot do when observed. Modern neuroscience suggests that incubation and REM share a neural basis. Both involve default mode network activity without executive oversight, and both are associated with the resolution of problems that directed attention could not solve. REM is incubation with the lights off. In certain contemplative traditions, practitioners cultivate awareness during the dream state, not for control, but for recognition, learning to know the dream as dream, and in doing so, to remain present within it. Researchers studying experienced practitioners have found measurable differences in their REM brain activity compared to untrained sleepers, increased frontal activation consistent with metacognitive awareness, maintained while the body remains in sleep. These practitioners describe their dreaming as creative presence, not directing the dream but meeting it fully. This may be the most refined version of what creative individuals naturally do at the edge of sleep, not trying to produce, but remaining open to what arrives. The social content of creative dreams has received relatively little research attention, but what exists suggests that creative individuals are more likely to dream of creative collaboration than non-creative controls. Some of these dreams are productive. The dreamer wakes with a sense of having worked through a problem with an imagined other, whose perspective was genuinely different from their own. Some are anxiety-driven, the waking fear of judgment, of inadequacy, of being found out. But both types appear to serve a processing function. The social dimension of creative work being rehearsed and emotionally integrated during the hours when the waking social world cannot respond. Research examining the long-term impact of sustained creative engagement on sleep architecture has found that individuals with 20 or more years of intensive creative practice show a distinctive REM profile, longer REM cycles, earlier REM onset, and higher gamma-wave intrusion normally associated with lucid dreaming. This does not appear to be deliberate. It appears to be the sleeping brain, over decades of creative activity, adapting its own architecture to serve the function the waking brain has been demanding of it. The brain renovates itself according to what the work requires. The question of what is lost when a highly creative individual can no longer dream, due to medication effects documented in clinical literature, or neurological changes that interrupt REM, is one that has been answered quietly in clinical research and creative memoir. Individuals who experience extended REM suppression report a specific kind of creative impoverishment, a flatness in the quality of their imaginative life, a reduction in the spontaneity of their associative thinking. Some describe it as working with the same tools in a room that has lost its light. The materials are still there. Something about the quality of seeing has changed. Across the accumulated evidence on creative sleep, one of the most consistent findings is also one of the most counterintuitive. For a culture that treats sleep as a productivity cost, the creative brain does not benefit from less sleep, but more. Not just more total sleep, but more protected late-cycle REM, more complete sleep architecture, more mornings woken from vivid dreaming. The creative individual who sleeps well does not simply feel better. They have access to a generative system the sleep-deprived creative cannot fully reach. Rest, for the creative brain, is not recovery. It is an active ingredient. Creative individuals in the visual arts have described, and researchers have begun to study more formally, the experience of seeing the next work in a dream before beginning it. Not a vague impression, but a specific image, a composition, a color relationship, a spatial structure arriving in sleep before the waking making begins. Painters describe waking with a canvas already visible in the mind. Sculptors describe a form arriving in 3 dimensions before any material has been touched. These pre-making dreams tend to occur most frequently after extended periods of intensive engagement, as though the sleeping brain, given sufficient material, completes the design the waking mind has been circling. The neuroscience of creative dreaming raises a question. Researchers are increasingly willing to address whether the dreaming mind has something that functions like its own aesthetic, not a self in the ordinary waking sense, but a coherent set of values, preoccupations, and tendencies that operate whether or not the conscious mind is present. The pattern in the research suggests this may be the case. The dreaming brain returns to the same themes, holds the same aesthetic preferences, and reaches toward the same unresolved questions, regardless of what the waking mind decided. What the sleeping mind makes is not always what the waking mind would have chosen. It is sometimes better. One of the more striking implications of the creative sleep research is what it suggests about individuals who do not identify themselves as creative, but who dream with the richness and structural complexity of those who do. Studies using blind evaluation of dream content. Judges who do not know the occupation or self-identification of the dreamer have found that a significant proportion of individuals who describe themselves as not creative produce dream narratives rated as highly creative, complex, vivid, emotionally sophisticated, aesthetically inventive. What the sleeping mind produces nightly is not always claimed by the person who wakes from it. Research examining creative flow states has found something that extends the arc of this hour, the neurological signature of a creator fully absorbed in work. Reduced self-monitoring, loose associative thinking, heightened sensory feedback. Maybe the waking brain voluntarily recreating what REM induces involuntarily every night. Flow, in this reading, is not a different state from dreaming. It is the daytime practice of a capacity the dreaming brain has been building all along. The creative individual seeking flow is not escaping into a new state. They are returning to the one the sleeping mind already knows. Creative work is not only carried in the mind. Somatic markers, physical sensations tied to emotional memory, are processed during REM in ways that leave traces not only in memory but in the body itself. Creative individuals who work through difficult emotional material often report that dream processing of that material is accompanied by specific physical experiences. The chest that has been holding tension releasing in the night, the jaw unclenching, the shoulders settling into a position they could not find while awake. What the sleeping mind processes is not only images and narratives. It processes the body that carries the work. Here is the intellectual version of what tonight has been building toward the creative brain dreams differently, not as a byproduct of creativity, not as a bonus feature of a particularly active imagination. It dreams differently because creative cognition and REM dreaming are, at the neurological level, expressions of the same underlying architecture. The loose network, high D-MN, low norepinephrine, theta-rich operating mode the creative brain favors, and that REM delivers every night. You dream the way you dream because of who you are when you are awake. And who you are when you are awake is shaped by what the sleeping mind makes while you rest. What these facts collectively describe is not a mystical claim about the creative life. It is a structural account. The same architecture that makes you creative is the same architecture that makes your dreaming so specific, so vivid, so strange. Not imagination added to a standard brain. The brain itself, running at its own frequency. Feel where in your body that lands. The last facts do not explain. They confirm. What they confirm belongs to whoever has been listening this closely. The research on creative dreaming is not finished. It is, in many ways, just beginning. What has been established is foundational. The connection between creative cognition and REM architecture is real, bidirectional, and functionally significant. Future creative individuals will likely have access to a fuller map of how the sleeping mind works and what it needs. What you do with what is already known belongs to tonight. Every night you sleep, your brain produces approximately 2 hours of REM. 2 hours in which the architecture described in this video runs at full capacity, unfiltered, unobserved, doing the thing it does best without permission or direction from the waking mind. For the creative individual, these 2 hours are not a break from the work. They are the deepest part of it. The creative brain evolved in a world that did not separate the dreaming mind from the waking one the way modern life does. The practices of creative individuals across cultures, dream journaling, hypnagogic harvesting, incubation rituals, morning pages, represent attempts to maintain that continuity, to stay in conversation with what the night produces. The creative brain in conversation with its own dreaming life is not a more romantic brain. It is a more complete one. There is something specific about the quality of attention that shapes what the sleeping mind does with it. Urgency, the driven, deadline-oriented state in which much creative work is done, produces one kind of dream content processing. Repetitive, solution-oriented, open attention, the receptive, curious state in which the best creative work tends to happen, produces another integrative, generative, narratively rich. The nights that follow the days of open attention are the nights the sleeping mind most fully becomes itself. What wakes you in the night with an idea is not random. It is something assembled while you are elsewhere, arriving before the rest of the mind can edit it. The creative brain does not wait for permission to work. It uses the hours the body surrenders as the hours it has always needed. The hours when the filter is down and the associations run freely, and the problem that had no answer finds one without being asked. The image that persists after waking, the one you carry through the morning without knowing its source, was made by the same mind that will make today's work. It is already today's work. It arrived before you were awake enough to take credit for it. The boundary between last night and this morning is less solid than it appears. The unresolved creative problem you took to bed may not be solved in the morning, but it will be different. Something will have been done to it in the dark that hours at the desk could not accomplish. A different angle discovered, an assumption loosened, a connection made that was not available before sleep. The problem is the same. The mind approaching it is not. The dreaming mind does not require credit. It does not need to be acknowledged, recognized, or even remembered. It will do its work regardless. In the hours the body insists on, whether or not you cooperate. The arrangement has been running for longer than any of us have been awake enough to notice. And it will continue running long after this hour ends. What you protect when you protect your sleep is not only rest, it is the operational capacity of a system that makes things you cannot make any other way. Things that require the filter to be down, the editor to be absent, the associations to run without supervision or approval. No waking effort replicates the conditions. Only sleep provides them. The creative mind at the edge of sleep is not at its least available. It is at its most. The work that arrives there is not distraction. It is the threshold opening. The same state this hour has been describing, arriving in real time, as the facts thin and the words slow, and the space between them grows wider than the words themselves. Every vivid dream you have had was the product of a brain doing exactly what it was built for, making something from everything it has ever known. In the only conditions where that particular kind of making is possible, not a glitch, not noise, not something to be managed or suppressed, a system running well, doing precisely what it was designed to do. The fragments you remember, the image, the emotional residue, the sense of something just out of reach, are not the failure of dream memory. They are the translation. What survives the crossing from sleep to waking is what the sleeping mind chose to send across. The rest was not lost. It was absorbed into the network, where it continues to work without announcement. Every vivid dreamer is, in some part, a creative mind. Whether or not they have claimed that yet, the capacity does not require a credential or a title or a finished body of work. It only requires the architecture, and the architecture has been present all along, running its sessions in the dark, doing what it does, whether or not the waking self has noticed. The days that follow the good nights are not coincidences. They are the sequencing of a system running correctly. The night doing what the night does. The day receiving what the night produced. The maker arriving at the desk with something already half-formed that they did not consciously assemble. This is not luck. This is the arrangement, working as intended. The creative brain is not overactive. It is appropriately calibrated for a world that asks it to make things. The restlessness, the hypnagogia, the vivid dreaming, the ideas that arrive at the wrong hour. These are not symptoms of something wrong. They are the operating signature of a mind built for this kind of work, running in both of the states where that work occurs. What the sleeping mind makes while you rest is yours. Even the parts you cannot remember. They are in the work. They are in the changed approach, the loosened assumption, the morning that feels quietly different from the night that preceded it, without your being able to say exactly why. The evidence is not always visible. It is present nonetheless. The connection you could not make yesterday may already have been made. It is waiting in the fabric of this morning, where you left the problem and where something has been working since. Patient, unhurried, operating below the threshold of conscious awareness, assembling what conscious effort could not. The problem is the same. What meets it in the morning is not. Every night the brain dreams. It is doing something that no waking effort can replicate, running the full generative range of what it knows, without restriction, without self-consciousness, without the editorial mind standing guard at every door. For the creative brain, this is not a luxury. This is the other half of the job. The half that happens while you are not there to supervise it. The restless mind that cannot stop at night is not broken. It is demonstrating, in the hours before sleep and in the vivid hours of early morning, that it is exactly the kind of mind this hour has been describing. One for whom the making and the dreaming have never been entirely separate, because at the neurological level, they have always been the same. The light and the dark have always shared the same architect. What happens in one does not end when the other begins. The creative life and the dreaming life are the same life, moving between two states, using both of them, depending on both of them. Neither one complete without what the other restores. They have always been one continuous thing. What you heard tonight goes wherever you take it. The sleeping mind will work with whatever arrives, with the questions this hour raised, with the things it named, with the understanding that is already beginning to settle below the level of language into something more durable than anything that needs to be remembered to do its work. The next creative thing you make will have been shaped by this night, by the hour you spent listening, by what gets consolidated while you sleep, by the associations that form in the hours ahead without your direction or permission. You will not see the connection clearly when it arrives. You will only notice that something has shifted, and that the work came more easily than you expected. Works that have shaped how the world thinks and feels, by creators across centuries, in every medium, in every culture, were made by brains spending a third of their lives in exactly this state, the architecture running freely, the editorial mind standing down, the full generative range active in the dark, doing the thing it was built for. Night after night, the sleeping mind does not close. It only changes states, and in the state it enters when you rest, it does its finest, his strongest, most irreplaceable work, the work that cannot be planned, cannot be forced, can only be allowed. What you give it is the hours, what it gives back, across the whole of a creative life, is everything it found there. The inner voice that carried you through 100 facts about your own dreaming mind, the one that recognized itself in the restlessness, in the pre-sleep ideas, in the vivid imagery that persists beyond waking. That voice has been here the whole time, not as a listener being told something new, as a mind being given language for something it has always known. The creative brain does not dream the way it does because of anything it chose. It dreams this way because of what it is. The same architecture, the same loose network, the same inability to stop connecting things that appear to have no connection. That is not a burden this hour is asking you to carry. It is what you already carry. The specific texture of a mind built for making, recognized, finally, for what it actually is. What tonight gave you was not instruction, it was recognition. The sleeping mind does not need to be taught. It has been at work all along. The next video in the Dream Science playlist goes one layer deeper into what tonight opened, to the question your sleeping brain may already be working on, whether the things you learn while awake can be encoded, consolidated, and transformed during sleep in ways that change what you can do the next day. That video is waiting whenever you are ready. But that is for another night. This one is already ending. The images from tonight are already beginning to loosen, releasing from the precision of information into the softer register of something absorbed. Let your body find the weight of that. The particular heaviness of a mind that has been given something and is beginning to carry it in the way that things are carried when they no longer need to be held consciously. Sleep continues what tonight began, in the circuits that consolidate while you rest, in the associations that form without your direction, in the quiet, generative hours when the sleeping mind opens and the waking self is no longer in the room. If you've already drifted, you don't need to come back. The work continues without you. Rest well. Gentle mind. The practice doesn't stop when the words do. Where the creative life and the dreaming life meet, and always have. Good night.